Cabin fever, cabin fever. What you gonna do? Let's do a golden age haul. That's what I'm gonna assume. Yep, these are all books from the 1950s and the 1940s. Recent pickups. Needed to do a haul, needed to share them, needed to get them out of the way. I wanted to show Daredevil number 52, January 1949 first, because it's just a real terrible cover. It's a Charles Burrow cover. Not a very good artist. No good design, no good proportion, no dynamics to it at all. You can't even tell that that ball is bounced 4 times. I had to really look at that cover to notice that. But he is a good writer. I'm picking off these Daredevils one at a time, trying to work my way lower. The iconic and dynamic covers are the early ones with the yellow claw, Nazis hanging, Japanese soldiers. I've got a couple of them, but they are quite expensive. Leave Gleason, a man before his time. Actually, this comic book series is the very first comic book series that was ever dedicated towards mature adults. His publication properties were Daredevil's most popular were Daredevil Comics, Crime Does Not Pay, and Boy Comics. He was based in Manhattan in the early 40s. His work, he was affiliated with a company called New Friday, who owned Silver Street Comics. And he saw that the comic books were starting to take off, so he purchased that title from them, kept the numbering, and introduced Daredevil in that series. It was his first creator-owned character, which was later revised in the modern era by AC Comics and Dynamite. All right, so now we got that one out of the way. Let's get into some really, really iconic stuff here. No, we're not doing that next. Whoops. We're doing this one here. Planet Comics number 50. It's a beautiful Joel Doolin as I call him. One of the greats of the Golden Age. Planet Comics, first published in 1940. Now, this was the first comic book series that was wholly dedicated to science fiction. The first. So a lot of comic book titles and series, they transformed over from pulp magazines. So Pulp Comics actually started out as Pulp Stories magazine. This title ran for 73 issues until 1953. This was also the purveyor in comic books as the good girl art. So they started out right out of the gate with good girl art, not only on the covers, but as I'm showing you here in the interiors, and almost every story they had in here was somehow surrounded with a damsel, either in the lead role or in distress. So that's a beautiful Joe Doolin cover. I think this is Joe Doolin here also. I know this isn't. I couldn't find any accreditation for that, except for that was done in the Igor shop. Okay, I think we're moving on to this one now. Exciting Comics, number 51, with an iconic Black Terror cover. You've probably seen this cover before. It shows up a lot in the hardcover analogy histories of the Golden Age. The Black Terror, his first appearance was in Exciting Comics number 9. First written by Patricia Highsmith, who went on to become an acclaimed novelist. In his secret identity as pharmacist Bob Benton, he formulated a chemical called formic ethers, which when inhaled gave him various superpowers. So was the first drug induced by inhalation formula, and with his sidekick Tim Rowland, together they're known as the Terror Twins. Another Golden Age character that was revived by AC Comics. So he was a pharmacist, created a drug, or as he called it, formic ethers, which he breathed in, and they gave him his superpowers, which were not defined here, but I'm sure it's super strength, invulnerability. Now remember this origin for later in the haul, and that is an Alex Schomburg cover. You can tell it's just so beautiful. Glad to have that in the PC. Another one going in the PC, The Fighting Yank, number 19, and another Alex Schomburg cover. This is from February 1947. His first appearance was in Startling Comics number 10 of September 1941. Bruce Cartle III got his superpowers when the ghost of his ancestor, Bruce Carter I, who was a hero in the American Revolutionary War, showed him the location of the magical cloak, super strength, and invulnerability. So it doesn't explain where his grandfather, great-grandfather, found the magical cloak. He just knew where it was. At this time, Timely also had a character named the Fighting Yank, who just appeared for one time in Captain America Comics number 17, August 1942. Just a cool Schomburg cover. Moving on to the Black Hood Comics number 14, spring 1945. First appearance in Top Notch Comics number 9, October 1940. Now this is by MLJ Comics. As you can see right here, their most popular character at the time was the Black Hood. He had his own radio show and 4 other self-titled comic books, and recently was revised by Dark Circle Comics in 2015. Now by issue 11, Top Notch Comics became Top Notch Laugh, and then Just Laugh Comics, starring, you guessed it, Archie and his gang. So MLG became Archie Comics also, Archie Comics Publishing. Cool, cool, cool. Glad to have that in the PC. Let's go file it and then read it later. Next up, we got some romance, guys. Yeah, we got some Romantic Confessions by Hillman Publications. And this is number 4 from January 1950. And Hillman was best known for Airboy and Airfighter comics. Now, Hillman himself first got into publishing to compete with Fawcett in the True Confession magazine genre. That would be romance and crime. And another one, that one of the titles went from pulps to comics, comic books, due to the decline in superheroes, of course. And also World War II was ending. Soldiers were returning home. They did not want to be reading stuff with fighting and big conflicts. So they turned to westerns, romance, detective stuff. This is just a beautiful book. And as I'm showing all this, you'll probably see I pressed a lot of these out. So you'll be seeing that as I talk. You'll see the before and the afters. This one here was just $8.88. Before I bought it, I did some research to see how much they were going for in this condition, and I could find them at an average around $50 to $60. So I said, for $8.88, I need to add this to PC. So bada bing, bada boom. There it goes. Okay, this one, a lot of people probably don't even know about this. Super Snipe Comics. Raise your hand if you've heard of this one before. Pretty interesting. Now it says number 1, April 1944, but it's actually number 2. It was a mislabeled comic. This is published by Street and Smith, and you may know them by their biggest property, which at the time, and I don't know if they still own them, but it was Doc Savage. Now, the premise of this book is Super Snipe is an imagined alter ego. Get this alter ego name, Copy McFad. So this kid here, that's Copy McFad right there. So he was the boy in this comic who had the most comic books in the whole world. And his whole life was just filled with comic books. It sounds like my origin story. So much that he created this imagined superhero that had this super strength. Now, Super Snipe was first appearance was in Shadow Comics, Volume 2, Number 3, and also in Army and Navy Comics, Volume 1, Number 5. So after number 5, they continued the numbering, and it became Super Snipe Comics. And it ran for 44 issues until 1949. So this actual series is accredited as being the first comic ever to deal with comic books themselves as the subject matter. So there you go. Did not know that. Some wild and crazy stuff there, huh? Okay, pretty cool, pretty cool. So Copy McFad, remember that. We're moving on. Public Enemies, number 6, right here. This was another one on auction. One of those auctions that was just bypassing everybody. There was a couple bids on it, but it was only up to $8 again, 8 or 9. So I took a shot. Did some research before the end of the auction just to see what these are going for in this grade again. And this book, they're going for $50, $60. I'm like, what? This Golden Age stuff is just like gold, baby. So I took a shot and ended up winning it. Really nice copy. You can see it's missing a little bit of the cover there. Other than that, I pressed it out. You'll probably be seeing that right here. This is number 6 from January 1949. It has some Maurice Whitman pencils in here. And I'll probably show a couple covers by Maurice Whitman, who was an amazing artist of the Golden Age in his own right. But this is by DC Publishing. DC Publishing didn't do a whole lot of books in the Golden Age, but they did make their mark with the books that they published. So they have a very short list of Golden Age titles. One that I looked up was going for almost $200, was Breeze Lawson Sky Sheriff. And they only put out one issue of that. Exposed is probably the most well-known of their titles, and it has an iconic horror cover that goes for billions of dollars. And that ran for 9 issues. Gangsters Can't Win ran for 9 issues, which I did get a copy of that in my last Golden Age comic haul if you want to see it. Jeff Jordan, U.S. Agent, had 1 issue, which I do own, but is not in any current videos that I believe. Outlaws had 9 issues. Payoff had 5. Now, I've been trying to get a copy of one of those issues for a while and almost got one and it slipped through my hands. But those go for quite a bit. I think the lowest they go for is $50. Public Enemies has 9 issues. Here's number 6. Roundup has 5. Been looking at those, trying to get me one. And Underworld has 9. So, they started publishing in 1941 song sheet lyrics, which you'd be amazed. A lot of publishers that's how they got into publishing. And they would publish these really thin magazines that had like maybe 5 to 10 song sheets with the lyrics, which was a popular thing at the time. They then dipped their toes in the comic book water publishing business with Select Detective number 1, which did really well in 1946. And so they got a little bit into it. I read you the list of their stuff, but they're really noted for their violence. In their comic books. And the collectors know this. That's why they go for so much. And then, like most publishers, they got out of the game in 1950s with the anti-comic book sentiments. Okay, I said enough about that. Boy, I think I talked like 3 minutes on that book. Okay, so Purple Claw number 1. And looked around. A lot of them were in this grade. Some were missing a lot of the cover. $50 I got on this book. So I went with this one because you can see through the sticker. I did put some chemicals on it and did remove the top portion of that, but I didn't want to damage the book, so I left it alone. I didn't put any more on there. And I showed that in a video a while back, what I use, so I'm not going to go into that. So that's Purple Claw number 1, which is from January 1953. And then this is Return of the Outlaw number 1 from February 1953. And these are both published by Mignon. Mignon is a subsidiary of Toby Press. So Toby Press, they also publish comics under Toby Press. And then they publish comics under this name, which was shortened for Minotaur, because you can see the little Minotaur right there. You know, I love my Golden Age Westerns, so I definitely wanted to get this. So I went for the number 1, which wasn't too much. I think I paid $35 for this. So Elliot Kaplan, genius businessman that he was, saw dollar signs in publishing reprints of his famous cartoonist brother. Trivia, who is it? Do you guys know who Al Cap is? He's a very famous comic book newspaper artist. And his main thing, his main baby was Little Abner, which surrounded, the story was that the character was like a hillbilly that dealt with everyday situations. Very well known at the time and beloved character in America in the 1940s. But Elliot saw these reprints flying off the shelf and decided, hey man, I should start publishing some of my own original creations. So we started selling original titles under both Toby and Mignon. And those titles were the aforementioned, and one of the really cool ones that's hard to get because it's expensive, and there's only like 3 or 4 issues in the title. Dr. Anthony King, Hollywood Love Doctor. Man, I really would love to own one of those. And then the other title that Mignon published was Tales of Horror. So you probably are more familiar with that one than any one of the other ones that were mentioned here. All right, moving on. Keeping it too long, of course, because this is Golden Age. I'm excited, and I'm happy, having fun here on this rainy afternoon in Florida. WoW Comics number 53 with Mr. Scarlet and Pinky and Mary Marvel. Cool cover. Got this for like $50. Pressed it out because I'm going to be showing that befores and afters. So that's number 53. So you take a look at that, snapshot in your mind, and we're going to move it on to number WoW Comics 57. I love the blue on that. It's like a periwinkle. So you got Commando Yank, you got Mary Marvel, you got Phantom Eagle, you got Mr. Scarlet and Pinky. What can we say about this? So this one that I showed down here is April 47. This one's August 47. Both Jack Binder covers. If you don't know who Jack Binder is, get on the internet, type in that name, do a little bit of research. Iconic creator of the Golden Age. Published by Fawcett beginning in 1940, their main feature was Mary Marvel. But Mary Marvel, her first appearance was in Captain Marvel Adventures number 18. Now, some history and trivia about WoW Comics number 1. WoW Comics number 1 had the first mention ever of Gotham City in comic books. Now WoW changed titles at 59 to Boys, then at 70 to Western Comics, and then at 79 to Western Hero until the finish. Mr. Scarlet and Pinky right here. Now, remember what we talked about earlier. They began in the first issue and were created by none other than the King himself. Jack King Kirby created this character right here with Francis Heron, whoever that is, and nobody cares. District Attorney, rich guy, Brian Butler, and his faithful adopted son or ward, hint, hint. Pinky the Whiz Kid, and I'll bet the kids gave him a heck of a time in school with a name like that. Fought evil in the city of, for several years, of Gotham City. In issue 1, in his law practice, where it was based, so you've heard it here first, the King created Batman's home turf. And what were his powers? The amazing rich guy had amazing acrobatic skills and was versed in many forms of hand-to-hand combat. Sound familiar? Wow, wow. Perhaps the king here was plagiarizing a certain character who at this time was only 1 year old. Anybody care to guess who that is? Well, I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you. Moving on. I'll take that out of your way. And I pressed those both, and you probably saw them there as I'm doing the video. Now I'm doing my Surf Blue imitation. Okay, number 8. Bullet Man, the Flying Detective. Nice, beautiful grade on this thing. Only thing is, it's missing 3/4 of one story page. But I talked the guy down from $75 to $50 on this thing. So this is from October 1942. Now this, another crazy, weird origin issue character owned by Fawcett, created by Bill Parker and John Small. First appearance, Nickel Comics #1. I'm guessing those cost a nickel. And that was in May 1940. So Jim Barr was the son of a police officer killed in the line of duty and vowed to fight crime himself. Sound like anybody we know? Hint, hint, not giving you the answer. So, rejected by the police academy, he got a job in ballistics, hence the name Bullet Man. Using chemistry, another one, to develop powers for himself. Hello, Black Terror, anyone? In this case, greater muscle mass, Captain America, and brain power called Crime Cure. So he created a chemical or drug called the Crime Cure that he drank. And it didn't stop there, folks. It gets real crazy now. He also invented a bullet-shaped gravity regulator helmets. Okay, well, who created the name for that thing? Because it sounds pretty cheesy. Which allowed him to fly and deflect bullets. And then, not only that, he created one for his girlfriend, who later became his wife, Susan Kent. And you guessed it, she called herself, wait for it, Bullet Girl. Not Bullet Woman, but Bullet Girl, okay? What? Believe it or not? So that's Bullet Man, the Flying Detective #8. Glad to add that to the PC. Beautiful looking book. So we are coming almost to a close. We got 2 more books, so the second to the last. Check that baby out. Beautiful, beautiful, great. I got this for the guy. It was a new listing. It just came up. I probably was the first to see it. At $28.99. I didn't even think. I hit that buy it now. And this Tim Holt is Red Mask #22 from 1953 was my baby. So I thought, who the heck is Tim Holt? I got a picture of the guy. He's got to be real. He was actually an American actor appearing in dozens of Western films. So the story goes that his father was a silent film actor and would bring Tim on location at all his shootings. I'm assuming that's what led Tim to follow in the career of his father's footsteps. He had several contracts playing bit leads, and finally when he started to work for RKO Studios, he got his big break starring alongside the famous and gorgeous Ginger Rogers. Now, you guys should know who she is. I shouldn't have to tell you who Ginger Rogers is. And the film they appeared in together was Fifth Avenue Girl in 1939. But there's some really beautiful good girl covers in this run. And this one fetching a little bit of, all of them fetching mucho dineros. Especially this one because of a horror cover. This book usually goes over $50 or higher. And this one's mid-grade, so it probably averages around $100. So when I see $28.99, I knew to jump on that thing right away. Okay, last but not least, so this is what I have on this, Rangers #36, 1944, of course, another fiction house, and another beautiful Joe Doolin cover. Now, I am showing as I speak, so I got to stretch this out a little bit. The inside stories, I showed them. Maybe you didn't know it when you were looking at the Planet comics, but they're known for the good girl art, like I said. So you could see every story in here is a damsel in distress again, or a leading damsel, and just beautiful stuff. Unfortunately, the Fire Hair, which is the main feature, and she becomes the cover feature after I forget what issue, till the end, is I don't know who draws her, but it's very cartoonish. It's not as beautiful as Joe Doolin stuff. It's not as realistic. But this is a beautiful cover. This has that store stamp on it. I like where they placed it. It almost makes it look like she has a tattoo on her leg. This here is missing like 3 or 4 pages, like the corner down here. I mean, you can read the story. It doesn't really hurt it a whole lot. That's why this book, and it also has a new staple here, so it ended up being like, I think around $65, which for this book is a steal. This book probably in this grade, if it didn't have that replay staple, would probably go somewhere near to like the $80 to $95, $100 range. Well, I hope you enjoyed this kind of like trip back in time to the 1950s and the 1940s. I hope this inspires you to kind of go after some Golden Age books. But because this thing is closing in on 30 minutes, I'm out of here. All right, so take care. Nighttiger saying happy hunting, and thumbs up to the community. And you never know what to say at the end of these things. Like, okay, bye. Watch